Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Ys 1. In the last part we went through the earliest sections of the shrine, even starting in the video in the exact same place, finding Fina in a prison cell towards the northeast, and then we did a couple of side things across Asteria just to get ourselves some extra experience and money and equipment along the way. For now though, we're back actively in the lower parts of the shrine. I know I ended the last part going out of Zepik Village to the north, but I actually forgot to say last time I was going to come over here. Whoops, but oh well. So now that we're a few levels higher, we have some better equipment and all that, it is now the best time to go tackle the lowest floors of the shrine. You could at least explore these lower levels earlier, but I wouldn't really recommend it as the enemies around here do enough damage that without those equipment upgrades, it can be rather threatening. So watch out for that. Though thinking about it, there is also a progression blocker in here. You cannot go past a certain point in the deepest sections of the shrine without using the mask that is in the same cell as Fina, so you need to go rescue her at least before you can actively finish the area. The game does have, like I said last time, a couple points where you can do things in a couple of different orders, but there are still a lot of events you need to clear before you can actively move on towards the latter portions of the game. So, like at the intro of the area, there is a statue over there we can actively walk into that teleports us away to another part of one of the floors. This effectively becomes a little bit of a teleport maze, but there's only really a couple of teleport points anyway, so it's not that complicated. The biggest thing is actually the enemies around here are actually kind of hard to kill, mostly because the corridors are so thin. Because like we mentioned earlier in the LP, bump combat, you're more likely to hit enemies if you go in either slightly off-center or at an angle. But with one or two tile-wide hallways like this, it's actively hard not to just dash straightward into an enemy. And, like, yeah, sometimes you'll still, like, block their attacks using your shields and all that, but it's really iffy on when that does actively work out in your favor, so it can be kind of troublesome, admittedly. There are other sections of the game more guilty of doing that. This is just the first one you're likely to run into, barring, like, one or two dead ends in the earlier floors of the shrine. And here we got the Silver Shield, which is a little interesting. I've actively skipped a shield, because I haven't bought the third one over at Dio's Armory yet. And you could go do that before this, but since I know the shield is here and I can go grab it, I am skipping straight to this one. I do eventually buy that other one all the same, though, just to have it for my inventory. Because 100% LP, I feel like getting every armor like that is kind of required, at least in a game with as limited an inventory as this. So we've already actually seen where I need to use the mask. Right here next to this particular statue, you might notice there looks to be what looks like a door's silhouette, but you can't walk through it. But if you put on the Mask of Eyes, you can. When the Mask of Eyes is on, you can see hidden passageways like that. However, NPCs, enemies, anything like that are completely invisible, meaning navigating with it on is not really recommended. I wouldn't be surprised if there's people who've done challenge runs where they try to just have that on as much as they can and try to just guess where enemies are based off their experience of where they spawn and usually walk anyway. Again, though, I wouldn't really recommend it. Over here, we get the marble key, which we do need. The way this game generally handles dungeon progression is that there's usually going to be just doors in front of a boss fight you need to find a key for. And usually, you get those keys either by talking to NPCs like the Shrine Key when we first entered here and fought the first boss 2 parts back. Or they'll be scattered across the dungeon's land, you just need to find those before you can actively go to the end of the dungeon. This game's dungeon design is generally pretty labyrinthine. It's actually relatively classic when it comes to that because of how we don't really do labyrinths the same way anymore, it feels like. But it's kind of fun to deal with in some regards and explore. So this way leads toward the boss fight, but I want to go back here and actively kill the enemies on the lower floors until I have all of their entries laid out. Didn't take that long, though I did level up along the way, and I am trying to showcase my levels when I level up. I think 2 of them have technically happened in cutscenes, but I'm generally trying to show it off. You want to be about level 6 or 7 by the end of this area to do decent damage to the boss fight. As usual, though, since we are coming up on a boss, I recommend you save. Though this is probably the one boss in the game you don't really need to save before unless you're already pretty low on health. I also sense a terrifying bloodlust from within the passage. Some sort of great power was awakening. Foreboding. Boss 2 is Nigtilger, which is a giant centipede. Its only attack is contact damage. Same with you. Run in concentric circles, and you'll hit it eventually. The tighter your circle, probably the more likely you are to hit it. In earlier versions of the game that only have 4 directional movement, this can be pretty troublesome, but if you have at least 8 degrees or the 360 control that's in the modern releases of the game, this is basically a joke, honestly, even at lower levels. Obviously, be high enough level you can actually do damage, but if you're like level 6, you'll be fine. Adol found a hidden room behind the wall. Neat! And within it we have the Book of Ease that Sarah has been talking about since part 2. So now we can go take that back to her, and she'll probably have something to say about it. You can teleport out. I'm going to choose to walk out and cut past it just to gain some extra golden experience so I can purchase anything coming up. Given the length of this dungeon in particular, it's pretty easy to do that. When you get into later games in the series, when dungeons get pretty long, though, teleporting out is usually your best bet. Along the way, though, let's stop in at Zepik Village, because not only can we probably show Jaba the Book of Ease in order to see what she has to say about it, we might as well check in on Fina while we're here. Oh, she's up!
Adol! Don't worry about Fina. She's feeling just fine. Her fever wasn't anything serious. She was just fatigued from her long and frightening ordeal.
I'm sorry, Adol. I can't believe I just collapsed like that without even properly thanking you. It's a bit late now, but thank you, Adol Kristen, for saving me from that dark, dank prison.
I'll continue looking after Fina for a while. I think some of the area's less savory inhabitants have taken an unhealthy interest in her.
Why would I be imprisoned in such a place? Try as I might, I simply cannot remember. My memories are of the prison and my own name, nothing else. And whenever I attempt to focus and remember anything else, all that comes to me is a headache.
I too try to think about my life and then just get a headache. That's very relatable. So our business in Zepik Village is done now, so we can now head back to Minea and go see Sarah and see what we can go do next now that we have our first Book of Ease. I say first because, well, they said books of ease earlier. There's definitely more of them. While we're here, though, we might as well go buy the third shield.
The large shield's made of steel. It's durable and can stand up to any attack thrown at you.
I doubt it can stand up to any attack because there's shields beyond it. And with that, we've now bought everything you can here in Minea. All the shops have been sold out for at least major equipment items. You can obviously get infinite, like, wings and mirrors and all that, but for what matters, that's it.
You are Adol, are you not?
I'm afraid I have bad news. Sarah was murdered, though we know not who is responsible. That poor woman. Please take this book. She gave it to me shortly before her death. Well, there's number 2. Good headway, I guess? God damn, that comes out of nowhere.
She said to give it to a red-haired swordsman named Adol, and she smiled as she spoke your name.
I thought she was joking, but then I should have known better. She is a fortune teller, after all. Ah, yes, it seems that with her last dying breath, she muttered, Adol abandoned mine at Raston. As your name was spoken, I assumed you would understand the message she wished to convey. More or less, head to the mine, gotcha. And at this point in the game, you can head there, and we are going to be. Though this is arguably where I'd say the game takes a major difficulty spike. But before we do that, we want to head on over to Zepik Village to see what Jaba thinks about, you know, her niece dying.
Ah, it's you. If you're looking for Fina, she went out for a walk around the village. What's wrong? You don't look well.
Adol told Jaba of Sarah's passing.
I see. I had a terrible premonition that something like this might happen. Sarah, too, seemed to know the fate that stood before her. I suppose it was her job to know, after all.
For a little more information, let's talk to Jaba again immediately.
Does that bother you? If it sets your mind at ease, do know that she had completely accepted her destiny. We shall both grieve, certainly. But if you wish to honor her memory, then carry out her final wish.
And now we can get a little more information for her, but also ask her to read the books of Ease that we have.
Long ago, Ease was ruled by 2 goddesses and 6 priests. Sarah and I are descended from one of these priests. Much of Sarah's power came from the Tova bloodline. I suspect she knew more about the disasters befalling Asteria than anyone could have imagined. Well, we cannot grieve Sarah's loss forever. In order to grant her dying wish, you must continue onward, Adol. You must find the Books of Ease. I am fully convinced that you are the swordsman whose coming Sarah foretold. At any rate, the Books of Ease. I'm a bit rusty, but with Sarah gone, I'm the only one left who can read the ancient script.
Let's just read the ones we have at the moment. Volume of Hadal first.
So this is the book you found in the shrine.
The Book of Hadal. Long ago, Claria was created in Ease. It was displayed in the Temple of Solomon as a monument to prosperity. But suddenly, disaster struck. In the shadow of that prosperity, evil had grown and brought with it the seeds of suffering. It struck with all-consuming fury, and in the wake of its demon hordes, even the fair land of Celceta became as ash.
But even if all were to be wiped away, the prosperous and the suffering alike, the twin trees and twin moons would forever watch over this land. Now, to my knowledge, I believe these books did have some of their text changed in later releases, because now this one references Celceta, which is the setting of Ys 4, for instance.
This is the Book of Ys lost from our family storehouse long ago.
The Book of Tova. Ys was healed by 2 goddesses and 6 priests. The goddesses embody the spirit of our land and inspire our lives. One represents order, and the other freedom. If we were ever to lose them, all our struggles and achievements would come to naught, and we would never again know peace. We must not lose the goddesses regardless of the cost, even unto eternity's shadow. Well, that tells us a bit about the world's lore, I guess, but still a lot of questions.
The words recorded in these books will surely illuminate the truth behind Asteria's turmoil. The storm wall, the appearance of the monsters, the continued theft of all items made from silver, and now Sarah's death. I'm certain that all of this stems from a great instability in the flow of destiny. You are the only one with the ability to uncover the truth behind it all.
Gotcha. Before we leave town, though, we might as well go see if we can find Fina. She's over on the pier at this point. At all. I can never thank you enough for rescuing me from that prison cell. It feels so good to be free. I still can't remember anything but my name, though. Who am I? What have I done with my life? And why was I locked in that cell in the first place? I don't know the answers to any of it. I only know that my name is Fina, and I've been a prisoner. Why can't I remember anything more? A good question. Maybe it's just because I'm genre savvy, but I also have a pretty good feeling we might actually find out as we go throughout the game. But for now, we're actively done here in Zepik Village. Our next destination is the mine, and if you were exploring the plains earlier in the game, you actually may have found the mines already, but I really hope you didn't enter them, because the mines you should really not enter until you're, I'd say even level 7 outright, not even like high level 6, because the enemies in there and the damage they can deal is rough. As for the mines themselves, they are towards the northwest of the plains, not all the way to the northwest, more like, I guess, central north, really. What makes the mines really rough in my eyes, too, is that I think for the point in the game they're at, they are the hardest dive for enemies versus the amount of resources you have. Because there's some accessories that can help you out here down the line, and later dungeons have more regular health restocks, because a lot of the chests in the game actually do contain more heal potions. There's actually 2 of them I don't outright grab because I don't use the one I have at that point to open them up. What also makes this area a little bit rough, at least for how I'm playing, is that every single floor effectively has 3 different enemies, so that's a lot of me just going back and forth in these very dim hallways trying to get the bestiary entries all filled out. Now, the heal potions in here are helpful, but one thing that does make this place a little bit kind, at least, is that there's some exterior sections, so to speak, where you are on a bridge in a horizontal section of the cave. While you're in those sections, you can stand still and heal. I forget if I've even mentioned that. I feel like I did back in, like, a passing remark back in part 1 or 2. But when you're out in the plains, you can just stand still, and your health will recover. In dungeons, that doesn't happen unless they have an exterior section, like the horizontal sections on in the mines here, or exterior sections in the final dungeon, for instance. Right there, we got the timer ring, by the way, which can be useful, but with how I play the game, I prefer the defense of the shield ring or the power of the power ring. The timer ring slows down the movement speed of any given enemy to half, and I think that includes some boss fights, but not many, if all. But also right there we got the silver armor, which is our next best armor, so make sure to equip that. Kind of weird though, last we heard a lot of the silver around the area had been stolen, and we ended up finding a silver shield back in the area. That is actually meant to be the one that was stolen from that person back in Minea, or was that Barbados port? I think it was Minea. So that was the horizontal mine section I was talking about, where you're on a little bridge, and after that point I actually went back to farm all the enemies in that last floor up to getting their max, so now I have those 3 entries completely maxed out in my bestiary. So now we can move on from Mining Pit 1 over to the southwest portion of the first floor of the mine. And it's from here we can actually head downstairs into the further basement floors of the area. This area does highlight one of my big problems with Ys 1 in particular, though, as while I actually do appreciate how to the point this game is, its visual enemy variety is nice, but mechanically they all come down to being the same thing. The boss fights are probably the most interesting part of the game mechanic-wise when it comes to combat. Even Ys 2, for as little as it actively adds to mechanics, adds enough where enemies can have a little more variation going on. Same with the first 2 Ys 4s.
So the heal ring there completely negates something I talked about this very video even. When you have that equipped, your HP will recover by standing still even in dungeons. You no longer need to look for exterior areas in order to heal up. It's just a matter of whether or not you're patient enough to stand still in an area that's surrounded by enemies that might end up spawning and walking into you from off screen. There are some cases where it's safe enough to use. I still prefer to keep on the shield ring for the most part, but there's cases you might want to use it. And there we got a silver harmonica. We heard someone else was looking for something like that earlier in the game, so we're going to need to take that back to her and Minea once we're actually back over there. Also, something else I appreciate. Standing still to heal doesn't take that long. Some games would make that go really slow. In fact, some other ease games, the amount you heal by standing still is way too slow for me to really rely on in any regards, which I think is probably the point by that point, but it's annoying all the same. That is a Rototree seed. If you think back as early as part 2, we heard someone talking about one of those, so we're going to need to take that over to him in a few moments. I actually do this dungeon pretty much universally in 2 trips, because the reward we get for doing something else I think is worth it getting before going to the boss fight at the bottom of this area. But first, before we do that, I want to get the full stats for the 3 enemies on this particular floor. And along the way, once again, I leveled up. And if you look at my health, the health bar now fills all the way to the right of the bar. I am now level 10. Level 10 is the maximum level in the game. Experience no longer exists. All your stat growths from now on are dependent on your equipment, which is kind of annoying, but at the same time, it's the first game, so oh well. Though I should note, the stats across the various versions are different enough where there's some boss fights that'll do more damage to you at level 10 in some versions than others. Like the next boss in particular, I think is easier in some earlier versions, even without the omnidirectional movement this PC version has. So like I said, now we're back in Minea for 2 things. For one thing, we can go show that one guy the Rototree seed over at the bar, but also, we got a certain someone's silver harmonica, and she is now on top of the ramparts over here. Hello again, Rhea.
You found my harmonica. What's that? You say it was in the abandoned mine at Reston. I see. It's just as I'd thought. At any rate, I extend my eternal thanks to you for its safe return. You are a most kind individual. May I inquire as to your name?
Adol gave his name.
Adol Kristen, you say? What a wonderful ring that name has to it. Thank you again 1,000 times for finding my harmonica, Sir Kristen. Please, do me the honor of listening to my song.
If I had a nickel for every Falcom series that started with a character that played a harmonica, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but weird that it happened twice. The harmonica's not all we have for Rhea right now, though. We also have that piece of paper we found near the one Rototree we saw earlier in the game. That poem, it's something I wrote a long time ago. Adol gave the piece of paper to Rhea. Thank you very much. That is completely optional, you never need to do it.
Adol, by some chance are you? No, never mind. Forget I said anything, please.
Alright. By and large, you just get some bonus experience for that in case you're at a lower level.
The eastern sky is stained in red, the western sky is blue. Between the lands of light and shade, my dreams are born anew. I hear the melodies of birds and taste the fresh spring air. I see the silent Rototree, and feel I've once been there. Its sight is all I'd ever need, to cry until the dawn, the lost serenity of man depicted thereupon. I feel the bird its wings aloft, and root to clearer skies. 2 moons that wax and wane out west, while east the sun doth rise. Fina, the wheel of fate has begun to turn once more. Even if I alone were to awaken to my destiny, I wish the dream could have continued for you forever. But sadly, we both have our roles to play, you and I.
The intrigue rises. I should also note, for seeing that scene, you also do get an achievement. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, we're gonna head back and finish off our duties in the mine before heading off wherever we have to go after that. See you guys then!